All right. Well, welcome to this this pretty last minute thing. Not really last minute, but I literally made this like an hour before before I went live. But welcome to my PowerPoint presentation on my trip for what was it called for this Christmas. Yeah, I completely forgot what the holiday was. So this is my trip, I guess. So this is just like a pretty quick compilation, I guess, of things that I've done over my break. So yeah, why the hell not? So might as well. So over the course of from the 18th to the 28th, yeah, that was my trip, and I went to Arizona, to San Diego, and yeah. So let's get into the timeline, I guess, of how the trip actually went. So this is the itinerary. There we go. So day 1 we landed in Phoenix. Day 2 we drove to Tucson. We went to the Kartchner Caverns and then the Tombstone. Sorry, just need to cough. But went to Tombstone. I don't even know what it is. Tombstone Town. I don't know. It's basically a town at this point. We then went to Chiricahua National Monument. Day 4, Sonoran Desert Museum and Kitt Peak National Observatory. Day 5 is our drive to San Diego. So all of the drives are usually like 1 day long. So it's a pain. The reason why we were able to do other activities during the drive to Tucson was because, well, those activities were on the way. And then day 6 we went to Balboa Park and Seaport Village, so those things are relatively close together. Day 7 we went to the Birch Aquarium and La Jolla. Day 8 we drove back to Phoenix. Day 9 is Papago Park and Old Town Scottsdale. On day 10 we went to Tonto Bridge, so that was like a 2-hour drive away from Phoenix. A lot, man. You'll notice that if you're like not in North America, you'll notice that there's a lot of driving, and these drives are like an hour long, an hour or two. From Tucson to San Diego, this took like 8 hours of driving. Maybe even more because we stopped in between, but generally it took quite a bit of time. And day 11, that was our last day, so Heard Museum and White Tank Park, and then we flew back. So that's the general itinerary of everything. Yeah. And let's get into day 1, I guess. Yeah, this is my uncle's dog. I'm not gonna say her name just in case, but yeah, she is an absolute gremlin. Like, I had the worst. Well, for most of the time I was staying there, she was very much so aggressive. And we joked that, well, she bit my ass. She literally did. Well, it's not like an actual like hard bite. She apparently just nips you. So she just nips you just to like assert that this is my home or whatever. So yeah, she looks very cute in this picture, but right after that she bit my ass, my butt, my derrière, if you will. But other than that, yeah, we became friends during the last few days of the trip. But yeah, this was when so we went to stay at my uncle's house during his time during our time at Phoenix. And I am allergic to animal fur. So when I went back to my regular streaming schedule on Friday, so that was the 29th, my voice was actually slightly deeper because my allergies actually like clogged up all my all my breathing stuff, and then that caused my voice to drop. It happens quite a bit because last time I did go to a friend's house and they also had a dog, and then my voice dropped an octave as well. So it was pretty it was pretty bad, but otherwise, yeah, that's our dog. That's their dog rather. um Day two. So this is our drive to Tucson from Phoenix, Arizona to Tucson. So you can see like your very stereotypical road, and then the mountain in the background, and on the right, that's the Tombstone town, or I don't know what it is. I think it's just a town because I mean, it's supposed to be like a historical town, and there is a lot of old buildings, but you can definitely tell that it has been touristified because there were Christmas decorations everywhere, and you can tell that, man, this it's kind of depressing because it's like, man, it's so historic, and there's just so much like you can tell that this is a place for tourists. And me being Asian, we walked to like we walked to a restaurant, and then everyone was just staring at us, and we were like, okay, yeah, okay. You can tell that they can tell that we're outsiders. But other than that, yeah, I mean, it's some of the buildings you can tell were very historical, but other than that, it's way too touristic for my liking. And also, if you're wondering why there's no pictures of the what's it called? Of the Kartchner Caverns, yeah. It's because, well, we couldn't take pictures over there. They have a dedicated tour for taking pictures, and we just didn't book that tour. We couldn't book that tour. So Kartchner Caverns was it's actually a living cave. It's actually a living cave system, which means that it's still being actively formed. So there's a lot of moisture. There's a lot of there's just a lot of moisture in general. So they actually tell you to not touch anything, because the moment that you touch anything, because of all the moisture and whatnot, there will be mold that grows over there. So the park rangers have to wipe everything down at the end of the day. So it is a very I would say it was very beautiful, because you could see all these different like rock formations, all these stalactites, all these stalagmites, and all these like drapery. I wish that we could have gotten the photo tour, but we just couldn't do that. So it was man. And also they don't let you take photos, is because like obviously you have to have your camera flash on, and if one guy like keeps flashing everything, then would disrupt the experience for everyone. So usually they would have a photo tour where they turn on the lights, and then everyone can take pictures, but generally it's in the dark because light can affect the cave environment as well. And also they have one of the biggest like columns in the world. The biggest one is in Thailand, I believe. And yeah, it was very it was very magnificent. So yeah, we had an hour-long tour. It was very nice. Our guide was also very nice and knowledgeable, and he could crack jokes. So he was generally a very nice teacher. So yeah, I believe his name was man, what's his name? Richard or something like that, I think. So yeah, if you guys ever go to Kartchner Caverns and you have Richard, yeah, he's a great guide, great teacher. So yeah. Day 3, this is our journey to Chiricahua National Monument. So here you can see, well, this is our drive to the monument, and already you can already see like the different rock formations. It's yeah, it's quite nice. So yeah, you can see like how fragmented all of these rocks are, which is generally pretty nice. And also, I placed this here at the start just so that you could like get like a general feeling as to what's to come. So yeah. Well, that's not really rocks, but So here you can see two different well, the only two animals that I was able to spot in the Chiricahua National Monument. So it was raining that day, so it kind of sucked walking or hiking, but yeah. So here you can see a Mexican jay, very very pretty and blue Mexican jay. So it's obviously not a blue jay; it's a relative, and both and jay species are actually relatives of I think the raven species. So or the raven family. I don't know my terminology all that well, but that's the Mexican jay. Very very curious and very I would say more on the smarter side of birds. Here we have some white-tailed are they white-tailed deer? I think they are white-tailed deer. I know they have like white tails, but you know that's just a simple distinction. These are they're the white-tailed deer specific to Arizona. So what makes these white-tailed deer is that, well, obviously their tails are white, but also one of the reasons why they have a white tail is because it actually stands out from the background. So you can see that all the fur and whatnot, it helps them camouflage, but the white is pretty striking. So obviously they're herbivores, so they more or less travel in packs or herds rather. And yeah, once one of the members of the herd actually spot a predator, they actually whip up their tail, so then you can see that white tail striking throughout the background. And what's really interesting is that it's not only their tail that's actually white, their entire derrière is also is also white. So yeah, and you know it's a cute little moment that I captured in between of these two white-tailed deer. So yeah, and also you'll notice that the white not the white the large ears. So these ears actually allow like blood to circulate around them, and yeah, when blood actually circulates around them, it actually cools down their blood before entering the rest of their body. So that's actually a really good cooling system for the deer. So yeah, because they live in the desert, so you know they want some method of cooling themselves even with all of this fur. So yeah. And here you can actually see different types of rocks. So on the right, I'm actually not sure how this type of rock actually forms. You can see that's very segmented. It's very fragmented. I'm actually not sure. Maybe it's from erosion. Maybe it's from sedimentation. I actually don't remember. Maybe it's from layers of lava just piling over and over and over again. I think I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. I'm really sorry. But on the right, on the left rather, I know my directions. But on the left, that's where it's going to be more interesting, because here you see a lot of holes. These holes are actually natural, and so it's when lava, you know, that hot molten rock. So lava has this weird tendency to actually trap air. So what happens is that these holes are actually just air pockets inside lava, and over time it actually solidifies and turns back into rock. And you know there's air trapped in between of them, right? So that's where the holes come from. They're just air pockets from the lava. So yeah, that's the rock formations, I guess. So this is basically what you see at Chiricahua National Monument. It spans like so long. Like you can actually see like it actually goes throughout like to the horizon. Like it is insane. And these look really small, but I can assure you, like they dwarf over you. Like that is just how terrifying these things are. So yeah. Yeah, so here, I think next you'll get a close-up shot of what you actually see. Yeah, it's basically these. So here you can actually see like two rocks balancing on one on top of another, which is yeah. So we want to see something that's called the Big Balancing Rock. It's basically just a rock just just like balanced on top of this other pillar, and it's just the very tip of it that's touching it. This is just a not as spectacular, but this is formed by erosion, water erosion, I believe. And yeah, and on the right, and you see this type of formation all throughout Chiricahua National Monument. So it is very, very nice. On the right, you see this pillar over here, and you'll notice that there's like a bunch of like horizontal scratches across, and is actually fallen down. So these pillars are, again, they're completely natural. And what actually happens is that, well, there's actually tectonic activity, right? Obviously, we don't live on like a static land. There's tectonic plates underneath us. So what actually happens is that there's tectonic activity, and these rocks, this ground, this mountain actually gets shifted. And because of these shifts, these terrain gets displaced in like segments. And over time, water infiltrates these systems and infiltrates these horizontal marks on the pillars, and that's how you get this distinct pillar look, right? So yeah, it is very, very cool. So yeah, this is part of their one of their signature monuments at Chiricahua National Monument. This is called the Organ Pipe. And honestly, I'm using a 200x zoom lens, so it does look pretty small, but this is actually really far away. So it's pretty insane, yeah. And this is a sunset that I captured throughout while driving back to Tucson. So here you'll notice, like, man, it's just man, you'll notice that I love sunsets. I love like the cosmic stuff. It is very beautiful to me. And yeah, it's just, yeah, it's a very nice and breathtaking sight. So I'll actually drink some water because I need to rehydrate. So yeah. All right, so so I forgot that was day 3. I don't think I mentioned all the different dates, but day 4, this is the days that we did the Sonoran Desert Museum, as well as the Kitt Peak National Observatory. So the reason why it's called a desert museum rather than like a desert zoo, even though you see animals, is because, well, it's not only a zoo. There's actually minerals in there. There's actually fossils in there. I believe there's actually art in there as well. So there's this huge variety of stuff that makes it not only a museum, but also various different things. And that's not only a zoo, rather. So that's why they said, it's not only a zoo. It's also not only an aquarium. So let's just call it a museum. And that's exactly what they called it. So yeah. So these are the 2 bird species that, well, there were more bird species that I actually spotted throughout my visit to the Sonoran Desert Museum, but these are the two best photos, I think. So on the left, that is a Harris's hawk. So yeah, it's this beautiful wingspan picture, I guess, and yeah. What makes these hawks pretty interesting is that they actually migrated into Arizona, into the Sonoran Desert, and I think they actually come from Chile or Argentina or Brazil or all 3. So they actually migrated here, and then they realized, oh, we don't have a lot of food here. So over for this specific species of hawk, they actually hunt in packs. So what happens is that they actually have a what is it called, a alpha female. They have an alpha female, so they're basically a matriarchy, which is pretty cool. And how I believe they hunt is that one I'm actually man, I don't remember, but I think it was like one 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 group like scouts ahead, and then another group scouts ahead. So like they take turns, and so yeah, I think that's how they survive in the desert where there's very little resources. Is that they hunt in packs, which I think is a pretty cool thing. That because usually when you see hawks, they're very like solitary, right? They're alone. So it is cool to see a different sort of behavior in raptors, I guess. In the right, you see burrowing owls. Very cute. Very. You can see that he's pretty judgmental. It's kind of funny, but they're very cute. And yeah, they burrow. They have nests underground, and I think that I mean, I don't know why they actually burrow underground. I do know that for their burrows, they can dig their own burrows, but I think for the most part, they actually just steal the burrows of like other animals, because why not? Why waste your energy in this wasteland when you can just steal other people's stuff? So that's what the burrowing owl does. And yeah, they're very cute owl species, and yeah, not much to say. We also saw a vulture. It's yeah, very ugly, very ugly vulture. So yeah. This is an antelope jackrabbit. It is so ugly. It is also very huge. It is probably I think that's so ugly. Like, yeah, when man, I thought that the rabbits in my backyard were ugly. No, this thing is huge. It's also very judgmental. I don't know why you're like that, bro, but stop. Yeah, it's just overall not a very pretty animal. It's so bizarre, but they can jump up to 10 feet, I believe, and they can run at 40 miles per hour, which is very fast. But yeah, they're ugly, so yeah, it's no thanks. There's like Bugs Bunny, but not a good Bugs Bunny. And here you have two different squirrels. So the squirrel that you see on the right is actually not from the Sonoran Desert Museum. It's actually from my country, from Canada, from Quebec, if you will. So the one on the left is a rock squirrel. So you can see that this is a rock squirrel. So I put these two side by side just to sort of compare the two, just so that you could see sort of the comparison. You can see that the Canadian squirrels are very gremlin-esque. I mean, I think that the rock squirrel looks very cute, and you can just sort of see the difference in patterns. So you can see that for the rock squirrel, they have this sort of white, scaly patterning for their fur, whereas the squirrel on the right is very like matte. It's very plain. That probably has something to do with their habitat. I would guess. I'm not too sure. So over here you can see that, it's yeah, you can see that it does help it camouflage a bit with the rocky terrain. And yeah, it's apparently it's one of the larger squirrels. But I think it's actually significantly smaller than the squirrel on the right. So that squirrel was huge. I don't know why, but I think different species probably like different like units of measurement for what is a quote unquote large. So yeah, but that's a very cute rock squirrel. Yeah, it's you can see that their nose is actually kind of smaller. Well, I have another photo, not on this PowerPoint, but I have one where the nose is kind of smaller than the Canadian squirrel's nose for some reason. So I don't know what advantages that actually brings. There wasn't. Yeah, the Sonoran Desert Museum didn't really put like it didn't really put like any sort of like descriptor for the rock squirrels because they were just running around. So yeah. Right here you have an ocelot, a very polite looking feline. Here again, just because it's a photo, it looks kind of smaller, but it is a pretty big cat. So this is the ocelot. Yeah, it's very pretty. Like, look at all that patterning, and it looks very cute, but it can probably just it can probably straight up like yeah, hurt you very, very badly. Like, I heard people being hurt by house cats. Imagine a cat that is like twice as big and probably like twice as strong and everything. So yeah, it's a very scary animal, even though it's so cute. It's friend shaped. And here we have a snake and some toads. I actually didn't do much I actually didn't read up on these guys. But here you can see actually the beautiful scale pattern of the snake on the right, which is yeah, which is nice. I think that's actually a rattlesnake of some sort. I'm actually not too sure. But yeah, apparently it's actually a myth. It's actually a common myth for rattlesnakes to rattle their tail only when they're about to attack. They actually, well, whether or not they rattle their tail, they will still attack you. So be wary of that, just in case if you're ever visiting Arizona or any other part of the world with a rattlesnake. So yeah. The toads on the right, yeah, they're just fat. That's why I just took a picture of them. So yeah, they're literal blobs. They're like Jabba the Hutt. So yeah, that's why I took a picture of them. Here they had a show where they presented 3 different animals, found in the Sonoran Desert. So one is that you see the porcupine. It is so cute. Like you can see its little paw over there. It trottles. It is so cute. Obviously you wouldn't touch them because they're spiky, but you know it's very cute. Yeah. And on the right you see these skunk, very common animal even in Canada. Like sometimes you just see skunks. And yeah, this one's been deglanded, so there's no glands, there's no like gland to store the stinky liquid. So yeah, what's really interesting is that their glands isn't just a gas. It's I believe it's actually a spray. No, oops, sorry, it's actually an oil. So when it sprays a predator, oil, because it's oil, it actually their skin absorbs the oil. So over time, this predator will smell like crap. And this predator will have that smell for nearly, I think it's like a month. So every time that predator wants to hunt, their prey will smell that and they're going to run away, resulting in the predator unable to hunt. So they can only like scavenge and whatnot. So they have to like scavenge for like an entire month. So a lot of predators will just straight up avoid them because, well, you know, they don't want to be sprayed. All right. But yeah, if they do go for, well, so the skunk actually has a couple of warning signs first. So the first warning sign is that, well, they're black and white because that indicates like danger or whatever. The second warning sign is that they actually raise their tail and they hiss at you or whatnot. And yeah, the third warning sign is that, if the predator still goes for them after like 2 warning signs, they just straight up like oil them up. So yeah. Also, if I get any information wrong, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to remember things off the top of my head. So yeah. But yeah. So it does take a while for the glands to be functional again. So the skunk doesn't want to use it all the time. So it wants to keep the warnings. As its main form of defense. Then you have a parrot. Yeah, that's a parrot. Pretty large bird. So yeah, again, photos don't do like scale to justice, but it is there. And here, after Sonoran Desert Museum, we drove to Kitt Peak National Observatory. So here on the left, you can see a very stereotypical road in the desert. Yep, that's that's about it. And on the right, you can see the observatory. So man, they have a bunch of telescopes. It is very nice. Yeah. Here you can see my first shot of the moon while while I was on the observatory. So this is just using my 200mm lens. Usually I would not be able to capture this sort of picture. You can actually see some of the craters on the moon. The reason why I'm able to do so is because, well, Kitt Peak is 7,000 feet above ground. So it is a very high up elevation. So we have to drive all the way up the mountain. It is insane. So I think this sets a pretty good idea of what the rest of the photos are going to be. So yeah, this is 7,000 feet above. Because usually, and it also helps that Tucson actually has very little street lights. So Tucson for the most part is dark. Like it is dark. And the reason for that is, well, they want to be somewhat like eco-conscious. Because if you don't know, there's something known as light pollution, and this doesn't only affect humans because people are like, oh man, it's so bright outside or whatever. But this also affects wildlife because wildlife, they're like, oh, it's bright outside. Clearly, it's the morning, and that, well, it kind of ruins ecosystems sometimes. So the fact that Tucson is very eco-conscious is very nice, and so that's also why they actually put the observatory up there. Well, one, Tucson is a dark city. What's really interesting about Tucson is that, or rather the observatory, is that light from Phoenix, which is 2 hours away from Tucson, actually affect the observatory more than Tucson itself, which is kind of insane because that's so far away. And yeah, another reason why the observatory is over there is at Kitt Peak is because, well, it's high up, and the other reason is, well, it is very dry. It is very dry, so that means that there is very little weather. And because there's little weather, there's no clouds. And because there's no clouds, well, there's very little clouds to block the telescopes, which is good for any sort of observation. So that's why Kitt Peak that's why the observatory was built on Kitt Peak. So yeah, that's a very nice moon, I guess. Here you can see, we actually had a guided tour throughout we actually had like an experience for the observatory to see the stars at night and whatnot. And yeah, they made us a sandwich. So yeah, sandwich was pretty okay, but yeah. So I believe in 2022 they actually had a wildfire, and the wildfire was actually so close to damaging like their telescopes. Luckily nothing was burnt down, but I believe they lost like a dormitory and they lost some other stuff, but none of the none of the expensive equipment was damaged. So that is yeah, I don't know why I'm suddenly talking about the. Alright, it's because while we were here standing looking at the sunset, the guy was just talking about like the fire. So by association I'm also talking about it. But yeah, that's just a fun fact. But yeah, this was a sunset. It was very, very beautiful. And on the next slide, you're gonna see a very typical Arizonian sunset. This is how sunsets usually look in Arizona. Very pastel-ish colors. It is so beautiful. Like this looks like on the left in particular, it looks like the cloud is from a painting. Like it is so nice. There's I tried taking night photography in my backyard, but it just never turns out all that good because, well, one, we're not high up enough, and also two, there's way too much light pollution. So when you're standing up top of this mountain, well, there's no light pollution, and you could just see everything. You can see above everything. It's just a beautiful sight. So yeah, that's the pastel sunsets. Over here is a night photography that I took with my 200mm lens. So you may notice that there's this red obnoxious clickbait circle. This circle is you can see a tiny white dot in the center. Well, not really in the center, but you can see a white dot in this photo. That tiny white dot is Jupiter. It is insane how much like Jupiter is actually it's actually insane to me that something so far away you can actually see with your bare eyes. It's something that you can't see anywhere else because there's so much light pollution. You have to have a completely dark sky just to see this. It is, man, it's very nice. And on the right, that's where you see the moon. And speaking of the moon, this is a photo I was able to get with my 200mm lens. And I was able to get it because, well, one, of the altitude, and two, there was no light pollution. And you could see that, I mean, it's relatively low quality because I did crop into the image, but you can see that this is way better than anything I've ever taken for like a moon photography, right? Because you can see like the different spots, you can see the craters. You can see the was it the Terminator? I don't remember what it's called. The whatever the line is. I think it is called the Terminator. So it is a nice it is so nice to be standing there and just being able to see the moon. You can actually see some details with your naked eye as well, but it just doesn't beat this photo. So yeah, it's very nice. And on day 5, that's where we drove from Tucson to San Diego. So over here you can see, oh, it's pretty foggy. That's not fog. That's rain. There has been a colossal amount of rain, and particularly the day before we left, particularly the day before Kitt Peak, before Sonoran Desert Museum, there has been flash flood warnings in San Diego. So we were like, can we actually drive to San Diego? And then we took the risk anyways, and there was a colossal rainstorm. There was also it was also like a thunderstorm as well. There was thunder, there was lightning, there was everything. There was heavy winds. It was horrifying. I was afraid that there would be like a tornado that formed. Luckily there wasn't, but the amount of rain was just overall pretty horrifying. So yeah. But at the end of at the end of the rain, at the end of the storm, I think there were 2 rainbows. There was a double rainbow, and you can actually see that there was a complete arc that formed. So you could see two arcs, which is really, really beautiful. Obviously I was in a moving car, so I couldn't really stop to take like a picture of the giant arc. But yeah, that was very, very nice as well. You can also see like the windsock over there. You can see like a windsock. It's like halfway standing up, which means I'm trying to remember. What? I swear I'm a pilot, guys. There's no hoops for this windsock half. So usually a hoop, I believe, is what, five knots. I think. I don't remember. No. I think. No. I'm mixing my stuff up. So each hoop for a windsock. So for most windsocks, you see like an orange and white section. For each white and orange section, so for each section, that's about 3 knots. And if a windsock is fully standing up, that's about 15 knots of wind speed. So that's important for a pilot to know. So over here, you can see that the windsock is about like half standing up with a bit more. So that's I would say that's about like what, maybe like seven or 8 knots, because that, like, the winds that day were horrifying. Like you could feel your car shake as you drove by. So it was pretty bad. So yeah. And day 6, we arrived at San Diego. We arrived at San Diego safely, and then we went to Balboa Park and Seaport Village. So Balboa Park, we went there during the winter. So when I went there in 2018, Balboa Park had this large variety of flowers. It was very colorful. It was very beautiful, and also the botanical garden at this time of the year is under renovation for some reason. So there's just a lot of things that we couldn't see. But as per usual, there has been very, very beautiful and texturally contrasting succulents. So that's what you see on the left rather. And as per usual, the very unique architecture of Balboa Park is, you can just see it over there on the right. So yeah, overall pretty underwhelming visit to Balboa Park. And as we were walking at Seaport Village, we found passion fruit growing on fences, which is apparently passion fruit. Like, you can grow passion fruit really easily in Arizona, but it's still very expensive. So yeah. I actually haven't seen passion fruit grow in the wild before, so it was very cool to see them sort of latching onto the fences, which is cool. So you can see that this one's still green, so it's not ripe. I'm actually not sure what species of passion fruit this is, because there's like 2 species that we consume of passion fruit. One's the yellow one, and one is the one has a purple rind. So I think this might be the yellow one, but I'm not too sure. And this is a very just a very famous statue. So the context behind this statue is that, well, this is after, well, first off, the statue, I'll just say it is called the Kissing Sailor, and it's about 25 feet tall apparently. I don't know how much that is in meters, unfortunately, because it's America, so they didn't write down their measurement units in meters, unfortunately. But 25 feet. So actually, let me just convert it. So 25 feet to meters. So 7.62 meters, which is pretty tall. But the context is, this is after World War II. Everyone is exhausted. They just want to go home. And they're just happy that they survived, that they were able to go back home in one piece. So they went to the port. Everyone is there to celebrate the heroes of the war, and in a fit of joy, a sailor just kisses a random person. Yep. So this is a very iconic scene where a sailor just kisses a random girl because he was just so happy to be back. And I think this statue was just it was made in it was made in reference to a photo that was just snapped of these two random people. So this is the context behind the photo. It was after World War II. So yeah, understandably so. They were all happy, they were all exhausted, so yeah. Day 7, we went to the Birch Aquarium, which is also part of the God, what's it called? I'm trying to remember, because it was also I believe it. Oh man, I remember what this was part of. It was also part of the Scripps, right? It was part of the Scripps like oceanic research, something like that. So yeah, it was pretty nice. You could see a large variety of sea life. Here I took like a picture of like 2 jellyfish because they're pretty swell. They're very beautiful creatures, even though they don't have brains. Yeah, jellyfish don't have brains, I know. But they're very pretty and majestic. Here you have anemone. One thing that you'll notice about the ocean is that it's very colorful. Like there's so many tones in the ocean. So here you have that cool blue, and then you have this bright pink of the anemone. It's just very nice. And then over on the next slide, you have this nice turquoise-esque color with this sea bass. I think that's like a type of fish. I think a sea bass. But yeah, with the kelp. Yeah, I think that's where Subnautica took inspiration from. So yeah. But yeah, overall, I love observing the ocean as much as I love observing space. Can't say I enjoy going to both biomes, but I love observing them. Here we have a sea turtle. I don't know why the camera angle makes it look really bizarre, but this sea turtle was actually found in a power plant, and she was injured. So part of its shell, as well as its 2 back flippers, were just, yeah, they were gone. So she cannot survive anymore in the wild. So they have to keep her at the aquarium so then she survives. And yeah, it's nice that they do conservation stuff as well. So yeah, and yeah, that's about it for the sea turtle. And also, no one knows how she got into the power plant. That's the weird part, or how she got injured. But this is the sea turtle. Next, we have a little blue penguin. So usually little blue penguins are, I believe they're native to New Zealand, but it just so happened that, why not send them here for studying? So this is I believe the tiniest penguin species alive. And yeah, they're very cute. They're also very tiny. And yeah, I know a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, penguins, I thought they only lived in Antarctica or the Arctic, or they only live in cold places. There are penguins that live in hot places as well. Hence why they're in New Zealand. But this or why they're in San Diego. So yeah, this is the little blue penguin. Very cute. And here we move on to La Jolla. We have a very devious seagull. They steal people's food. So yeah. And on the right you see a pelican, which is very they look kind of dumb, but pelicans, yeah, they're pretty majestic. And I think we arrived at the right time, because you could just see giant flocks of pelicans just flying by. It was a very beautiful sight. So yeah, those are the two birds at La Jolla Beach. And here you have sea lions in a Renaissance painting. It is a very funny scene. So over here, I'll actually, you know what? I'll describe it in the next image. So here's, oh, it's so cute. they're spooning, so cute. But these are the sea lions. You can see how cuddly they are. They have two moods. One is that they're gonna fight each other, and then the other thing is that they're just cuddling with each other, which I think is adorable. But yeah, they're kind of aggressive. And yeah, this just reminded me of Renaissance paintings because you could see like random people like reaching for other people, and they're just like screaming and whatnot. So this is the Renaissance painting for sea lions. So these are good pictures, and they're also very cute. So the one on the right looks like a wise old man, just closing their eyes, waiting for the next hero to come by and be like, "Sir, what? I need your advice." So that's this wise old man. And on the left, you can see a very cute sea lion just resting on a rock. So tired, just ploop there. It's very cute. But what makes them actually sea lions versus seals is that they have ears. So usually for seals, they would only have holes for ears. So they would only have like these like it would only be a hole. So yeah, but sea lions are like us. We have this flap for ears, right? You can see that these sea lions have flaps for ears. So that's the main distinction between a sea lion and a seal. It's just the ears. Very, very simple way to distinct to separate the two what are they called? Pilopads or something like that. Philopads, something along those lines. But that's how you usually distinct the two. And this is a beautiful sunset view at La Jolla. You can see the palm trees, and then you can also see, the sun. What more can you ask for in a sunset scene? I mean, this is a very nice sunset at the beach. So yeah, you can also see a kite. So, very lively photo. Alright, sorry, need to hydrate a bit. So, day 9, that's where we... Alright, day 8, I skipped day 8 because that was, sorry, you know what, it's not worth it. Day 8 was when we drove from San Diego back to Phoenix, Arizona. So, that very next day, so day 9, that's our, sorry, need to cough. But that's where we went to Papago Park as well as Old Town Scottsdale. So Papago Park had this very, very huge formation, and when these formations had a hole towards the sky, which let me take this photo to the left. It's almost like an eye just gleaming. If the moon was there, I think that would have made it more like an eye, but I didn't have the moon was not out yet, where it was not in proper alignment, so best I could do was the sun. And on the right, you can see that it is an oasis, but this is not a natural oasis. People are actually building an oasis over there, which is sort of sad because you can see that, they were attempting to commercialize this natural formation, which is sad because you never really want to see like natural stuff just desecrated, because it took millions and millions of years for certain formations to form, right? So having just a commercialized places. I don't know. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit well with me. So, yeah. And this is Old Town Scottsdale. You can see that it is very artistic. You can see a fountain filled with bronze horses. So, yeah. I mean, this is actually, it's not really like a roundabout. It's like a circular road, sort of deal. So you would have you would drive around it. And then on the right, that's the founder of Scottsdale, I believe, with his wife. I don't remember her. I'm gonna be honest. There was like a sign there, but I don't remember what it was. But yeah, this is Old Town Scottsdale is it is part of something. Well, it is in there's actually a road that goes across it, and it's called Indian School Road. It is a very, very like descriptive road. Like, I don't even need to tell you what it's about for you to be like, oh, this place has this sort of history. So if you're not aware of what I'm saying, is that the Indian and Indian Road doesn't refer to like actual Indians. It refers to Native Americans. In Canada, we would call them First Nations, but in the U.S., they don't really have like a designated name. So Native Americans will do. But if you're not familiar why they're called like Indians, it's because, well, Christopher Columbus, he wanted to circle around the earth and then arrive at India. But because he didn't realize that there was another continent over there, he was like, oh yeah, we're in India. And then turns out he was in the US, or was he? Yeah, he was in the US, and he was like, yeah, you there, he said, pointing at a Native American. You are Indians. And they're like, what? So from that point on, the Native Americans were known as Indians. And as every story goes for colonization, there's a I'm gonna say it right now. So they had attempts at quote unquote civilizing these Native Americans. So most people actually perceived them as savages. Most of them were like, oh, they're less than human. These savages, they're not human. They're all primitive. They're one step below evolution and whatnot, right? But one person in particular were like, no, they're human. It's just their culture that makes them less human. So if we get rid of their culture, we can have the human back. We can save the human. So let's educate them. And that's how these schools were formed. These schools were formed because, well, they want to quote unquote save them from savagery. They wanted to civilize them, right? So these schools were formed, and there's a very unfortunate story behind it, and that is they quite literally took kids from their home. So I don't know how they would perceive themselves as like the good side in this point. I don't know how they would perceive as like saving someone when they just kidnap kids from their home. So they took these kids. They took them to a school away from their homes, and the first thing that they did was cut their hair. They threw away all their clothes, and then from that point on, they were unable to speak their own language. If they spoke their own language, they would be heavily punished. They could only speak in English. So, and another thing was that these kids were not they were not fed. They were fed like soup and bread. Like when they were back at their families, they were fed like, oh yeah, they were fed like meat, they were fed like vegetables, they were properly nutritioned, they were properly fed. But once at these schools, not only did they lose their identity as Native Americans, but they're also badly treated. And they were stuffed in rooms very close by, which allowed diseases to transmit extremely fast. So a lot of kids just straight up passed away because, well, people were racist back then, and they let them suffer, they let them die. And it's just an overall very disgusting situation. And these were called, well, these were schools. These were quote unquote like rehab schools, right? So one of these schools was on that road, and that's why it's called Indian School Road. And it's just not a good story to have. And if you just look at like a list on Wikipedia, you'll see just the amount of schools that have been present throughout like the US. And I'm not saying like Canada is like a saint in this either, because this country is also equally as guilty as that, because this country is also quite frankly, I think it's so trash. It's so trash towards the Native Americans or the First Nations, both actually. I'll talk more about that in the Heard Museum slide, but this is why this road in particular is called Indian School Road. And here you can actually see, the statue, love statue. So this is a pretty iconic statue, and I mean there's one in where I live as well. You can see these everywhere. Like you can tell that the that the artist is extremely popular, because you just see this type of it's like you can see this art like everywhere. It's like I haven't gone like a day without like seeing that. It's kind of it's sort of insane, I would say. But yeah, there's also like a bunch of other like drawn like artistic stuff throughout like the Scottsdale. So yeah. And on the right, this is actually their library. This is basically a mansion. It is so nice. But you can tell that they invested a lot of money to making this city look nice. So yeah, you can tell that it's interesting, because they're keeping part of its history, but you can also tell that they're sort of commercializing on it. And they're also having like this neo Scottsdale, where it's like more modern, where it's like you can tell that this is the rich people place. And it's actually really interesting, because the old town Scottsdale is also very expensive as well. So that's the that's old town Scottsdale. Day 10, that is Tonto Bridge. So that this was 2 hours away from Phoenix, Arizona. And yeah, this is the bridge. This is the bridge. You can see the arc above the hole in the center. That's the bridge. You can actually see water actually flowing through there. During certain times of the year, you can actually, during this time in particular, it was actually flooded. So we couldn't actually go underneath of the bridge, unfortunately. But you can see like there's this nice waterfall. Generally, the only time that's not flooded is during the summer. I mean, then there's still going to be water that goes through, but generally, I don't know why I keep saying generally. But yeah, during this time, it's all flooded, so we couldn't advance any further. But on the next slide, you can actually see that it's so cold that there is actually icicles, and there's actually quite a few icicles. I was actually pretty shocked that there were icicles throughout that. So yeah, and on the right you can see the bridge. What's underneath of the bridge, you can actually see through it, which is quite nice. And here you can see this sort of drapery, and yeah, so how these formations actually form, and how stalagmites and stalactites actually form, is that, well, as water actually goes past minerals and whatever, particularly limestone, it collects some minerals, and as it flows down through things, it leaves a trail of those minerals as well. And so all these patterns, all these draperies, so this type of thing is, I believe, is called a sort of drapery type of deal. These are formed by water just flowing through it and just leaving trails of minerals behind. So yeah, it is again, this looks really small, but I was like I was across of a ravine when I took this picture. Like, it is massive. So yeah, that is Tonto Bridge. And day 11, this is the day before we went to before we flew back home. So last day. So this is at the white so ignore the petroglyph. So before we went to White Tank Park, we actually went to something known as Heard Museum. So Heard Museum is a museum dedicated to Native Americans. So there is Native American art, and there also is history behind Native Americans and how people have mistreated them throughout the years. So Heard Museum was actually a mansion by a rich guy. His last name is Heard, and he donated his mansion so that it could be a museum for displaying the art and the culture of Native Americans, because it's just not a recognized thing. So that was a Heard Museum. I didn't take any photos of Heard Museum, mainly because they're like, you can't really bring your professional camera in there. You just take pictures with your phone and don't use them for any commercial purposes. I'm way past the point of using my phone to take pictures. So I'm like, I don't really feel like it. But Heard Museum, it was pretty interesting. You can see a bunch of art, Native American art. You also see a bunch of First Nation art as well, because I was surprised, like, oh, they have more First Nation art here in Arizona than they do in Canada, which proves how badly Canadians treat their First Nations. So if you don't know, I don't really have a full grasp of the situation. So obviously, to quote unquote pay respect to the First Nations, the Canadian government was like, here you have your territory back, right? So here's your territory, but the moment you step out of this territory, you lose all privileges. You can no longer return to this territory. And then people are like, bruh, really? And you're like, not only that, but here, your taxes, specifically for alcohol and for cigarettes, are going to be specifically lower. So what do people do with little to no income in their territories? Well, first off, because, well, no one wants, well, there's like no jobs in there. So most of these territories that you see, especially in Canada, they're filled with casinos, and they're filled with bars and whatnot. It's so you can see the influence of the Canadian government on there, because they're like, that's the part where there's less tax, right? So we're gonna tax you less for that. So that's it was part of unfortunately that was part of the plan to quote unquote satisfy the Native Americans, satisfy the First Nations. But it was also planned to be like to tranquilize them, to be like, here, drugs and alcohol. You know how that works. If you destroy a person, then there's Fastest way to do that would be to get them hooked on drugs and alcohol. It's yeah, you can see how scummy it is because the Canadian government, like, they're so nice, but nope, they're tranquil. They're getting their Native Americans hooked on drugs and alcohol for the sake of, yeah, clearly we're doing a good job, right? And then companies, companies, they love their PR. And so companies, they're like, we acknowledge that this land was was from the Native American, was from the First Nations. We acknowledge it. Yep, that's it. Just an acknowledgement. Even for the Air Canada, so usually in Air Canada, they have like the safety message. So at the beginning of the safety message, they say, "Yeah, we acknowledge that this land was from First Nations." And guess what? That's it. It's just an acknowledgement. They don't do anything to help the First Nations. They just say, "Oh yeah, we acknowledge them." But all that alcoholism, all that drug abuse, yeah, that's all on them. What do you mean the Canadian government provided them with it? No, absolutely not. Turns out, yep, they did provide it with them. They did provide them with it, rather. So it's I'm glad that there's things like Herd Museum that actively highlights just scummy sort of behavior. Um, it's just unfortunate that it's in Phoenix, Arizona, and not in Canada itself, where it should be, because Canadians, they just actively ignore it, which is sad. Because it's like, man, really. Anyways, that's the herd. Also, the herd. What there's this passage telling the story of just a Native American family who got their children back after they went to the Indian school, and yeah, they couldn't communicate anymore because that's how far they've been quote unquote rehabbed. They just couldn't communicate anymore, and they just looked entirely different. It's like a heartbreaking story because the kids would just not take off their clothes, like they would not change back into their cultural clothing. So their culture has been straight up ripped from them, right? And the thing that gets me is this mother who tried actively to get them to change back to the culture, but wasn't able to. And she just said, "It's fine if you wear those clothes. Just please don't leave again." And I was like, "Oh, oh man, that hurts." Like that actively hurt because it's yeah, it's just painful seeing people like you know yeah, sorry. It's just painful seeing people just, I don't know, lose someone else. So yeah, ugh. I don't, I don't know why I'm getting emotional at this. Um, but yeah, it's they're the Native Americans have been mistreated, even today. Like it's no question that they're still being mistreated. So yeah. But anyways, that was Herd Museum, and honestly, if you're at Phoenix, Arizona, I highly recommend you visit the Herd Museum. It's yeah, it's very nice. It's I think that just the history lesson by its own is worth it because it's not something that most museums would try to, especially ones concerning like American history, would try to divulge. They would be like, yeah, look, we arrived at these lands, we had trading, and then civilization went from there. But they often don't mention how horrible those the history, the dark history behind it is. right? Because at the end of the day, history is written by the victors. That is something that people say, and it's true because obviously, if you're victorious, if you're the people writing history, why would you wanna slander yourself? So obviously, they want to paint themselves in the best way possible, and it's just sad that this type of history is just not widely known or not widely acknowledged, and no one really does anything about it. So it's nice to have this sort of history in a museum. So that's the Heard Museum. And here, all right, we can finally get to White Tank, the White Tank Park. So this is you can see this rock. It's not exactly a normal rock because there are shapes drawn into it. This is called a petroglyph. So petroglyph is a type of image that's actually it's actually drawn by removing part of the rock. That's actually removing the surface of the rock. So they use probably tools to carve out these forms. So a petroglyph is specifically something that is removing the rock surface. So that is a petroglyph. So petro comes from Greek. It comes from it's Petra. Petra comes from Greek, from stone, and glyph is carve. So it is a stone carving. So yeah, they are relatively far away from you, so you can't really see them in all of its glory. But that is a petroglyph, and yeah, it's just you can. Apparently, petroglyphs are about 20,000 years old. So, in case you didn't realize, we are currently in the year 2024. I know it feels weird to say 2024, but these things were back in the 18,000s before Christ, BCE, before Common Era, rather. So the fact that such images are still present in our time is just insane, right? Because there's an entire civilization that disappeared, or that was just gone, and it's ingrained in these stones. It's like each image represents someone that's just not here anymore, and I think that's sort of insane to think about. Yeah. And here is our last slide. This is the last sunset image that I took in our trip, during our trip. So here you can see the signature pastel sunset colors of Arizona. And there's the cactus, because I didn't want to leave the US. I didn't want to leave a desert without taking the signature cowboy in the sunset with the cactus photo. So this is it. And yeah, after this, we went back home, ate dinner, and then skedaddled back home. Skedaddled to the airport to fly back home. And that is our trip. That is 11 days for this trip. This stream was so long. I actually didn't expect this to last this long, but I mean, I love geeking out about certain stuff. So this just so happens to be something that I like experiences. I like visiting new places. I like experiencing new cultures, and I just generally like history behind things. So that's it. This is my trip, and yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it, and hope you guys learned something new, assuming that I'm not talking out of my derrière. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks you guys, and yeah, see you. Take care. Bye bye.